Hi everyone, welcome to Illustrious Media. My name is Fushel, and tonight we're going to talk about Star Wars Episode 7. I think this is the first half of the season finale, and I have meant to get this video up a bit sooner because it's Episode 8 dropped like yesterday, so I haven't seen that one yet. But holiday stuff basically got in the way of it. So I wanted to put this video up before I watched the season finale, episode 8, and I think it might be more interesting than watching them both and then outlining and redoing the whole video. So, but without further ado, let's get started. So first off, I just want to issue the standard spoiler warning. There's gonna be spoilers in this. I mean, there's no point to talk about the episode, in my opinion, without talking about spoilers. So it's not the same as reviewing a movie per se. But so if you plan on watching this episode and you plan on watching the show, check out the episode, check out the show first before you watch the video. But otherwise, let's get started. So first, I want to talk about what I liked about the episode. So I love the build-up and the payoff in this episode. And what I mean by that is that it calls back quite a few characters and quite a few locations from early in the show, and especially episodes 2 and 4, and I think a few other ones in between with regards to that character Quill, played by Nick Nolte. Yeah, it made all those both those episodes and a couple more meaningful by bringing those characters back, especially episode 4, which I always felt was a bit weak and possibly the weakest of the season so far. And I think it's the one where when Mando goes to the farming planet with the fish farms or something and saves the villagers from the ATST and those marauders or whatever. So, and it did, and also more consequential because they brought back Gina Carano's character. I forgot what the name was. Cara Dune. So first, I want to talk about Quill. I really liked his characterization. Oh my god, in this episode, and his arc across the entire show. I mean, I really liked the way he was played and he was presented over the course of the show. But I mean, this was kind of his. This was kind of like where all the payoff happened with his character. So I'm really glad he wasn't a one-off, and that we got to see him again. And we learn a little more about his history and his backstory through his interactions with Cara Dune, or Gina Carano's character, and even IG-11, that droid bounty hunter, the one that did the cool kind of spinning around with the blasters. And so this episode definitely brought a lot more soul to Quill's character. And one of the best aspects of this that they really did the whole adage of show not tell, and they kind of told in this, but it was done in a very interesting way. I really liked the exploration of the lives of those who were caught in between the Empire and the Rebels, and I really like how they presented that through this lens with Cara Dune, Carano's character, and Quill. And so they really showed, okay, for a lot of people, in the galaxy, many did not have the luxury of choosing which side to take. They more or less fell into it, were caught up in it. They had to kind of pick the side and pick using the options that were given to them. And some of them were essentially, oppressed into being soldiers, being used as being used as a part of the Great War Machine, especially from the Empire. So I need to rewatch this actually, because I'm still not absolutely clear on exactly the details of Quill's character with regards to what he did before, and kind of how that relates to Cara Dune, and I think who is supposed to be like one of those elite assassin squad or something like that, some sort of elite assault squad. So I thought they handled the storytelling here pretty well. Yes, it was a bit of telling. It wasn't like they did flashbacks, although I liked this better because the way they told this is kind of they they were able to tie in character development and character relationship development in with the telling. So it wasn't just flat out people spouting exposition. Okay, there was character development between Gina Carano's character and Quill, and that was a lot of that. If you have to tell and not show, that's the way to do it, because you're achieving several. I forgot which screenwriting book I read this was in, but or maybe it was in one of the classes I was in. But you definitely want to have each line of dialogue, each scene serve as much purpose as possible, not just in terms of propelling the action forward or giving information, but also character development. I think which writer was this, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it was a screenwriting book where the author was like, if you're not achieving both character development and story progression, then you need to rewrite that scene. So in this case, they were at least able to nail the character development part of it, and because the payoff that comes later with this, with Quill, and with Quill's how the episode ends for him, this makes it worthwhile. So that said, on that note, I mean, the scene of Quill's demise was handled very well. I really like what Deborah Chow, I think, I forgot which episode she directed early in the show, and I know she's doing the Obi-Wan series, but I'm glad they had to handle this, because I mean, she nailed the previous episode and she did a really good job here, and I don't know if she's the one doing episode 8, but I thought the way she or they handled Quill's demise really elevated the show to a much more mature tone and a more nuanced theme. So everything became a bit more nuanced, a more like, the emotion hits you, but it's done in a delicate way. It's done in a very kind of, I don't know, a graceful way, I would like to put it. And it's definitely a lot more nuanced than seeing him being blasted off, the reptile he was riding. So I like the way they did this. I'm trying to remember. I feel like I've seen this kind of sequence before, how they handled a character death, but I'm not sure which show or movie it was. Anyways, I was bummed to see him go, as I think a lot of fans of the show would agree. And I think that moment would be the whole sequence of him sacrificing himself to save Baby Yoda, or in an attempt to save Baby Yoda, I mean, keep Baby Yoda away from the Empire, would be a great motivator that pushes Mando forward. So, and then finally, we get to Moff Gideon. First off, this guy had an awesome introduction. I mean, I really enjoyed the TIE Fighter and Spec Ops Stormtroopers thing going on here. It's the way he lands, and the way even in the TIE Fighters are supposed to be kind of the most they're kind of like supposed to be in the Model Ts of the Empire, or I know some people would not be happy to hear that, but it's like the ever-present force, the swarm of the Empire fighters, the TIE Fighter, and they took something, and that's what I like about the show so much, is that they would take these wars before mundane, and even just like, okay, here's a TIE Fighter, one in the million of them, getting essentially being the red shirts of the Star Wars Starfighter Corps, and they made it look badass. They made it look interesting. The scene lands, and it holds a presence. It's able to, it's like it sets down nicely. It sets down and in a way that's like, it gives out the vibe that you don't usually associate with a TIE Fighter. You usually give the vibe. It usually, like the tone, the vibe this TIE Fighter gave off. This whole scene of landing, Moff Gideon landing, is like Vader coming down in a shuttle or something. So I really like how they did that. And the way the stormtroopers just went through, and I mean the Spec Ops soldiers, the one in the black suits, just utterly annihilates everything in sight. That's some really good action. And it really drives a point home. This guy is not here to, he's not around. I like how aggressive Moff Gideon just comes in as both with the TIE fighter and with the just essentially the Death Squad, and blasting everything in sight. He's not waiting around for anybody to come out and surrender. He's just gonna I think at that point he couldn't have really cared if he had killed everybody in there, but he was counting on them to survive. Oh yeah, going back a little bit. In regards to some of the mundane elements. So I think the individual focus on elements like weapons and ships and the potency of just your standard troopers make the Empire seem a lot more threatening and badass and consequential in every scene in this show. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to assume and project that the showrunners really had this in mind. What I'm about to say, that is, when they were writing the show, is that just, like when the show was first marketed and you saw the stormtrooper heads on spikes, you thought, okay, the Empire is kind of seen as best days and it's on the way out, and people are using the helmets for trophies and stuff. We're almost led to believe that they weren't that big of a deal and they wouldn't be the focal point, the main focal point of the story. And again, you show them as kind of on the back foot, completely, I wouldn't say dissolved, but scattered. But what's been happening through the course of the show is that you're now starting to see a more hardened, like steeled version of what the Empire used to be. These survivors, the remnants, you could say that they're more aggressive, they're more desperate, I guess, but more kind of like nothing to lose and not messing around at all anymore. And I mean, not that the Empire really messed around, but they just seems to be that much more hardened now. And when Moff Gideon shows up, and this is where it all really, really gets going. So it just makes them that much more badass and consequential in every scene. And this would in turn heighten the stakes, I think, psychologically, when we start seeing them in greater numbers going forward. So that's what I have for likes. Now, as far as dislikes, most of these are not that, most of my issues are not that, there aren't that big of issues. Starting off, the predatory kind of pterodactyl attack in the middle of the night seemed a bit contrived, because this is, you think the characters who have long called this planet home, or had their base here, would have been aware of the hostile wildlife and dangers of an open campfire, with no cover around in the dead of night, and the kind of threats that would bring. I mean, I find it hard to believe that any of these guys wouldn't know what will happen, if when they're camping out like this and roasting meat. So it just felt a bit contrived. It seemed like it was done solely for Baby Yoda to do his force heal, on that. God, I forgot the name, and I forgot the actor's name either. But the guy that's the guy. I'm not even gonna try. I'll probably put up a little subtitle. But yeah, it felt like it was contrived, and it was just an occasion for Baby Yoda to show off his powers with the Force, and to stir and change the motivations of the guy, of the bounty hunter, I don't know, like job board dude that would betray them. And if you guys want to flame me for not knowing not recalling the guy's name, go right ahead. I deserve it on that one. And also, my more major dislike was that Werner Herzog's character was killed off too unceremoniously and quickly, because that built him up with this air of mystery, and then you were like, okay, what's gonna happen with him? And he wears this really interesting garb. He's got this pendant, and the way he speaks is like, yes, he's part of the Empire, obviously, because he's wearing the Empire pendant, but there's something about him that's like, okay, there's something more to him. And that's like, maybe his motivation may not be completely in line with the Empire's. And so to have Moff Gideon come down and just essentially execute him with the Dark Troopers, it's like, okay, I mean, I wish there was more. I would have seen more. And I had like talked about this with a colleague of mine that watched the show and enjoys it, and he's saying like, how like maybe they're the assistant character that you saw from early in the series, early in the show. I mean, God, forgot the guy. I don't know the actor's name, but the guy that was kind of scared and almost gets shot by Mando when he first comes into the Empire, Werner Herzog's like little safe house. And so yeah, it might be something, but I just Werner Herzog holds the scene and inhabited that role so well. I was hoping for more. Now I think the shock of that served to give Moff Gideon an even more kind of a badass reputation to start. I get the plot logic of punishing competence, and I just wish we learned a little more about this character. That's all. But thank you very much for joining me, and I'm gonna go ahead and watch the new show. Watch episode 8 right now and put up another video. But thanks again for joining me on this. And if you like the content, please subscribe and put down a like and a comment. But yeah, have a happy New Year, guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.